grab your favorite beverage. It's time for Porch Therapy with Edward Dino and Keith Hillary. Hello, everybody. It's time for Porch Therapy. Edward, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty well, Keith. Thank you. It's nice to be with you, talk about the events of the day.
Same here.
Let me introduce my friend, Keith Hillary. I've known him, Keith, for probably 60 years, and he's been a civic leader in his community. He's been a great mayor in a small southern town. We're still enjoying the benefits of his public service, and he remains interested in current events. And he and I got together and thought we should do a little podcast and talk about things the way we see them and the things that strike us as unusual.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Edward. We have known each other for about 60 years, went to high school together, and I was still in college when you were in the legislature writing environmental laws that are still active today in Louisiana, although there's some people out there trying to... Some of those MAGA people are trying to revoke some of your legislation that has been sustainable over time.
Yeah.
And you had a career in the law and helped out a lot of people in Mandeville and Louisiana. And we're here at your house today on this beautiful porch. And didn't you move this house here?
Yeah, we moved it about almost 30 years ago. It's an old Creole cottage from the German section of Louisiana, which isn't often understood, but the Germans came here early, before the Cajuns. And it's an old, what they call a bousillage house made out of mud, and we've really enjoyed it. And, we're right off the shores of Lake Pontchartrain.
Didn't you barge it over here?
We cut it in half.
Cut it in half. Okay.
We cut it in half and had to take the roof off, and it rained on it. Yeah. We had to park it in Ponchatoula, a little town 25 miles west of here, and things started sprouting out of the walls, and but we're able to
that construction. What is that construction with those hand-hewn beams?
Yeah, those are diagonals, and there are slats, oak slats in there that hold the mud in place, mud and moss and horsehair.
Well, hopefully one day we'll get into visuals on this podcast.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
But for now, we're just going to get together and talk about whatever comes up. It's a conversation.
Yeah, it's a kind of semi-restrained in that I think we said we were going to talk about the big, beautiful bill today.
That's on everybody's mind.
Yeah, I guess, it's my understanding that a lot of the congressmen didn't even read the big, beautiful bill.
I saw where Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't read at least 2 pages, and she said she wouldn't have voted for it.
No kidding.
But then she had to retract that, as they all do.
Well, my understanding that Laura Boebert's reaction was that what's so big, what's so beautiful, and whose bill?
It was interesting. We met at your sister's house with a representative of Bill Cassidy a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And one of the conversations was Bill Cassidy could have the effect of basically changing this bill before it got into law, and he could have been a leader in that effort. Mm-hmm. It looks like he got other people, other senators that are going to take that lead, and poor Bill is going to be put back to probably, it seems like he's going to have a primary challenge because he was one of the people who voted to oust Trump in one of his past impeachments.
Yeah, one of the things that, I don't know if you noticed it at that meeting with Senator Cassidy's assistant, is the main thrust was that he needs to speak out. He needs to be more, just like you're saying. He could be
a leader.
He could be, and that he doesn't speak out, and that everybody initially referred to him as Senator Kennedy.
I know, that was funny.
They didn't even know who he was initially. And last night, Lawrence O'Donnell referred to him, had a picture of him and referred to him as Senator Kennedy. I mean, he really needs to, he could be make such a contribution today.
Yeah, and with Musk wanting to fund Democrats, which was heresy, and he's walked that back. But, he could have actually helped Bill Cassidy to be able to offset this primary challenge. He could have gotten Musk money just by helping kill the bill.
Yeah. Senator Cassidy, my suggestion is before he shakes hands with Donald Trump, like he did on the appointment of RFK Jr., he should talk to Senator Sessions about that and about how things and maybe the former defense secretary and maybe some of the generals, and just see how that goes. But the bill, I know you and I have talked a little bit about the bill, and the bill is just full of things that I think reveal the mindset of the people that put it together and support it, which is it's a dark place.
It is.
Yeah,
I mean, the big things you hear about are the tax cuts, and we're going to extend the tax cuts, and all those tax cuts are going to be but it's just amazing. In the past, they used to talk about tax cuts and trickle down, but I haven't heard any trickle down in this conversation. It's just blatantly, we're going to give money to billionaires. I mean, we're going to take money out of kids' mouths, and we're going to cut education, no more Head Start, and we're going to just put money in the billionaires' pockets. And it's really unfortunate that if you look at, who's the last person that balanced the budget? It was a Democrat. It was Bill Clinton.
Two people.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Carter.
But the whole idea was, the head of Republican Congress, but he didn't do a big, beautiful bill to be able to balance the budget. This thing is gonna knock us out of how many trillions of dollars. We know from Trump's first term that he's put 25 to 28% increase in the national debt. This is gonna pass that.
Yeah. When you try to balance it out, and we talked about, for instance, there's a thing in the bill which is very vague, but it reduces your deduction for property losses during catastrophes.
Yeah.
I mean, who is that going to help? Why the money that is saved by the federal government by denying help to people that have lost things in a catastrophe is literally going into the pockets of the richest people in the country.
And I worked for FEMA after Katrina and even more recent. And one of the big issues with public assistance with Katrina, with any of these storms, is removing debris. And if FEMA can't come in to help communities remove debris, it's going to hurt economic development in all of these cities. And we're here in Louisiana. We had a big storm a couple of years ago. In addition, Katrina 20 years ago that we're still recovering from. So it's not just individual assistance to people who need help, but bringing water in, bringing tarps in, bringing things in, and removing that debris is going to be a big hit to these communities. I don't know how they're going to do it. I really don't know. We're going to see when they have a storm. And if you look at all those tornadoes, and even his hand-picked governor of Arkansas couldn't. It took her a while. She had to go and bend her knee twice. She had to bend over to be able to get that money.
What a sight! But I'm talking about. You're right. I don't know what the funding levels in the bill are for FEMA, but I do know this: that people are not going to be able to write those off of their taxes the way they used to.
Yeah.
And that savings to the federal government, is going into the pockets of billionaires. People wonder how President Trump, who said that he was going to cut cut Social Security. And
Was not going to cut.
Well, he wasn't going to cut benefits.
Right.
That he was going to make these $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid and Social Security, et cetera, without cutting benefits. And some people think he's stupid. And some people, I've heard people before, I don't know if it's true or not, say that he lies. But if you think about it, if you cut off medical research, right?
Yep.
You cut off vaccinations. You cut off access to health care. You're going to lower the life expectancy, which has been spiraling out of control for years.
How funny was it that Joni Ernst said everybody's going to die?
Yeah,
and that's true.
That's kind of a giveaway of where they're coming from.
But don't you remember those those death panels that they talked about? Was that Obama and Obamacare?
Yeah.
They were talking about grandma was going to die in these death panels. Sounds like Joni's right back on that.
Yeah. The point I'm making is that during COVID, Social Security saved $2.4 billion.
Yeah.
Because 1 million people died.
Yeah.
Right?
Hate to laugh.
But I mean, it saved that because so many people died.
Yeah,
so, I mean, if you cut off their health care, cut off medical research, cut off vaccinations, Trump will be the mastermind of cutting the cost of Social Security without cutting the benefits. It's brilliant. Dying. It's absolutely brilliant.
By attrition.
But and he kind of played around with that strategy when he suggested people drink bleach when they during COVID.
Yeah, I do remember that.
But it's a brilliant thing, and let's face it, the longevity has been spiraling out of control for years. Finally, Trump has found a way to bring it down and save us money.
Well, the whole idea about not having insurance and eliminating a lot of poor people and getting rid of insurance, if there's a person who is not insured, no health insurance, and they get into an auto accident, say, and they're in a coma. They could be in a coma for years. Mm-hmm. Who pays for that? Well, the way it's set up, somebody has to pay. If it's they're writing off those bills to the insurance company, or it goes into a pool and everybody pays. That to me is socialism. Yeah. Where everybody pays for that. So why not do socialism on the front end and keep them on some sort of insurance? I'm actually for a single payer insurance. Mm-hmm. I think we really need to get to everybody gets an insurance, and we get a healthier population
and people aren't as stressed out.
And if you look at what Michelle Obama tried to do, when she was talking about get healthy food, and they laughed at her, and Fox News degraded her, and now they got RFK, and he's talking about some craziness. But some of the things he does talk about is we need to eat healthier, and I think everybody realizes that. But some of the other stuff he's talking about is wacko. And, I grew up when polio was around. I remember having a little scratch on my arm to have that polio vaccine. Didn't necessarily know anybody who had polio, but because it was eliminated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did vaccinate all my children, and none of them have autism. Thank God.
Well, we talked about a few of the things that are in that bill that I think reveal, like I said, the mindset of this movement. And we mentioned, for instance, they removed the excise tax on gun silencers, right? It had been in since 1934. And oftentimes tax policy is to influence behavior. Like you make charitable deductions tax exempt. You make medical savings accounts so people save. Well, we're encouraging people to buy silencers, and it's projected that it will cost the government $1 billion over a 10-year period, and that money, that silencer money, is going straight into the hands.
The whole Second Amendment issue is like, well, you can regulate machine guns, but you can't regulate AR. You can regulate bump stocks on ARs to make them to where they're not machine guns, but you can't regulate silencers. I mean, that's the most ludicrous thing.
Well,
I mean, I would love to have a tank just in case.
Yeah, who knows?
The government wanted to come take over my property, or maybe a small nuclear bomb. But you just can't have that.
No, I was talking to my cousin who was very much against any kind of gun control, and I said, what about that neighbor you pretty much don't like? Suppose he had a Sherman tank next door. What do you think? He said, well, I wouldn't want that.
Or just,
I said, well, you're for gun control. We just have to, where do we draw the line?
Or a grenade launcher.
Yes.
And if you look at what's happening right now with these protests, and which are getting out of hand in some cases, you put the military in there and it aggravates people. What if those people had grenade launchers that were legal? And they're fighting against what they believe is an oppressive government. It's almost like, whoa, is that a Second Amendment?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Another feature of the tax, of the big, beautiful bill, is the repeal of the 10% excise tax on tanning services. Now, I think that is definitely going to help out the poor people for sure.
Well, and especially those people that want to get tanned and maybe have a problem with cancer,
Yeah, well, I understand the president encouraging tanning.
I know that orange look. And I noticed that Taco Bell, that little girl who she was, her makeup was kind of orange a couple of days ago. I don't know.
She's ready for that tax exemption.
She might have been in the tanning booth. I don't know.
The other thing is that is disturbing is it repeals the tax exclusion of accounts set up for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
It taxes endowments to colleges. Increases taxes on private foundations' net investment income. I mean, it's all such a dysfunctional, mean-spirited approach to government.
It's just amazing that I mean, for one, we're here in Louisiana, and the Speaker of the House is Moses, isn't he?
He's a professional Christian.
He's a professional Christian. But I thought he called himself Moses. And it's like, how can that be that this bill is his legacy?
Yeah.
And Louisiana, which has a high percentage of poor children who are on SNAP, who are on Medicaid, who need summer food, and we're going to cut it all so we can give billionaires. Yeah. We don't have that many billionaires in Louisiana.
No, I think we have two.
Yeah, Gail Benson. And
Gail Benson, there's a new one.
The guy who owns Cane's is the richest man in Louisiana, and Gail Benson is below that. But they're going to get all these tax credits.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
Two. So we're going to take, 30% of those poor kids who are going to be off Medicaid, and they're going to have no more SNAP and no more Head Start and no more special ed, so that we can give Gail Benson a couple of more dollars.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to also do, and a lot of these tax exemptions that are being done away with for private institutions and charitable organizations are at the discretion of the president.
Yeah.
If he decides for some reason they don't deserve a tax exemption. I mean, this is right with unconstitutional.
Well, look at Harvard,
Yeah. Well, look.
He's going to get rid of their tax exemption.
Yeah, right. And, the same with the tariffs. I mean, the tariffs that's a big shot way to deal with taxes.
I love when they interview Trump and they ask him what his favorite Bible verse is. And he doesn't want to get into that because it's so personal. But then the other thing was when he's got a little thing in the Oval Office that is behind a curtain, and he had the Constitution behind the curtain. No, excuse me, it was a Declaration of Independence. That's what it was. And he didn't say that it's a Declaration of Independence from England. He just said it was a beautiful bill that he loved.
Yeah,
just like the Bible.
Yeah. He had the Constitution and the Bible kind of printed together. The way that this bill treats immigrants seems to me to be particularly cold-hearted. He's levying a 3.5% tax on remittances. This is like hardworking people that are paying taxes here.
Right.
They're paying sales taxes. They're paying income taxes. And then they're paying a tax just to give it to their families.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to hear how my fellow Christian fellows can explain that.
Well, it was amazing when you ask most people how much, do immigrants contribute to the tax, to contribute taxes. They contribute almost $100 billion in taxes. Now, they don't get Social Security because they're not in the system. But most people don't have any idea that immigrants are working and contributing into taxes for the United States.
And the studies show that an immigrant is more likely to create jobs than a person born in the United States.
And it's amazing to me that now, evidently, they ran out of criminals that Biden had arrested. And so now, they're locking up children. They're going to Home Depot to be able to get these people who are actually working and producing to be able to make a point. Because he promised people that he was going to deport these people. And it's amazing to me that his numbers are still high on immigration and deportation with what's happening on television right now. I mean, this is like the civil rights riots. But it's funny. I was watching some of the stuff in LA, and they were line dancing, they were singing, they were dancing until the National Guard got there. And all the National Guard is allowed to do is protect federal buildings and federal officers. They're not allowed to go and arrest people. But today, they arrested people. And it's like, well, Trump has been talking about insurrection, but he didn't do the Insurrection Act. And today they arrested people and turned them over to local government. But what happens? The court has no authority. The court has no teeth. Nothing's going to happen. And that's the sad part, is that he's violating the Constitution and there's no consequences to it.
Yeah. There's so far no branch. The courts have been, I've been pleased with the courts.
Oh, no, the courts have been great, but contempt of court, there's nobody to carry it out.
That brings me to one of the things that is the most shocking to me is language in the budget that prohibits the expenditure of any judicial funds for the enforcement of a contempt order, or maybe not a contempt order, and I want to reread it, but I think so, or for a temporary restraining order against the executive.
Right.
I mean, the courts can't enforce.
Right. That's in the bill.
That's in the bill.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And the way they do it is very clever in the sense that it requires the posting of a bond.
Right.
So, like you're picked up off the street and being shipped to El Salvador, before you could have that restraining order put against the government, you'd have to post a bond to cover the expense for the plane, the pilot, the gas, everything that the government has had to pay up to that point, or might lose in damages. You'd have to post several $100,000 a month. I mean, it's geared for two things: take away people's rights and to cripple the courts and to make the courts ineffective against the executive. I hope that the Senate has enough courage to follow their own rules with regard to reconciliation, because this is obviously substantive law.
Well, that's the whole thing. This reconciliation is supposed to be budgetary, but this bill goes way past that. And so I don't know what's going to happen in the Senate. It's going to take a while, but there are a lot of people that say it's going to pass ultimately. because they want to get those tax credits to those billionaires. And so they might have fluffed it up a little bit so they could compromise on a few things just to get, but they're going to still cut those SNAP programs. They're going to cut those Pell Grants. They're going to cut that, they're going to they're saying, oh, if you work and you're on Medicaid, you can still get Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people that just can't work.
Well, what about those people that get thrown out of work because of the tariffs? The truck drivers, the people that work at the ports. Yeah. They get thrown out of work because of the actions of the president, and solely the president, not the Congress,
right?
As it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
They get thrown out of work because of the president, and then they lose their insurance.
Well, and all the supplemental Medicaid was people that were marginal, that they were working, but they still couldn't afford it. How many people that worked for Walmart were on federal Medicaid because they didn't pay enough? They're all working. There are a lot of people that are working on Medicaid.
Yeah.
Poor people are not the enemy in the United States. Poor people need a hand up, Let's take a break. We don't have any sponsors, but we would like to tell you about a business in downtown Covington. Black Flower Apparel and Records celebrates love, diversity, fashion, and music. Go to downtown and browse their records, CDs, DVDs, VHS, cassettes, posters, and more. Located at 424 North Columbia Street, Covington, Louisiana. That was a good break, but I think we've been talking too many facts. We need to just start talking about some craziness like...
how about gossip? How about some political gossip?
Some gossip. Yeah, it's a good... like Fox News.
Yeah, facts really have become irrelevant.
They get in the way of...
I remember that senator from Arizona, Kyle, I think, and they caught him in a bald-faced lie, and he said that the intent of the statement was not to convey truth. And it's gone downhill from there.
Alternate facts, we know all about that. So I don't know what's going to happen. Elon is trying to walk back some of those things, but I thought the most interesting thing of that whole exchange was Trump threatened him that if he was going to fund Democrats, there would be consequences. I don't know about that quid pro quo, but that sounds like it.
I tell you what, I know I wouldn't, when I was in politics, say that some big contributor, how much I'd helped some big political contributor.
Oh my God!
I mean, but today you can say that kind of thing.
It's all in the open.
No big deal. Yeah.
Except it's not all in the open because that crypto stuff is unbelievable. The amount of corruption in the White House right now, and one of the things I like the most is when I see him in the White House and I see all that gold and somebody looked at it and said, oh yeah, he bought those from Home Depot and he sprayed them gold. And then they actually took pictures of the Home Depot items and they were exactly like on the fireplace. And he said, oh, there's more to come.
I bet.
It's going to be like Mar-a-Lago. And did you see he's paving over Jackie Kennedy's rose garden to make it a patio like Mar-a-Lago. And I can't wait till ICE starts raiding Mar-a-Lago. But that might
take a while.
That might take a while. That might be in the next president.
Yeah, it's I was thinking about that. You and I, of course, for full disclosure, I think should reveal that we're both registered Democrats.
Well, I am.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering how long it will be before we're hustled off the streets and sent to El Salvador.
We could easily be sent to a gulag. I did a gulag when I was in Catholic school back in 1st through 6th grade, excuse me. I did 6 years behind the gulag over in St. Peter's.
So you've got a little experience.
I got some experience with that.
I'm thinking that maybe a little niche enterprise might be to teach open a place to teach Democrats how to speak Spanish. I think that could come in real helpful in the near future if things keep coming up. A bunch of us could end up in El Salvador.
A second language is also is a benefit. Anyway, it's really gotten pretty crazy about what's happening every day in the news, and I do believe that all this that's happened in Los Angeles was to distract you from the crypto corruption, from the Musk, Epstein comments, and from the big bill, the big beautiful bill, which is
it's floundering.
It's an extreme reaction to be able to change the dialogue. You know, all the media now is all about what's happening. And if you see some of the pictures in LA where they're line dancing and they're singing and, you know.
They ought to tax that. A little happiness tax. I think it might be in order. I was watching it with our friend Rick this weekend, and I was saying, we couldn't find a protester. It was all media and police.
The media was getting shot.
In the media, I mean, there weren't any protesters. I mean, the media, I think, is complicit in this whole thing. Because,
I really believe that, Trump and The Apprentice, he has he cut his teeth on reality TV shows.
Yeah.
So he hired all these pretty Fox people, and he puts them in front of the TV, and they're in costumes, and they cosplay. They're not making any decisions. The decisions are being made by Project 2025 and they can go before Congress and they can say, I don't know, because they don't know. Because Project 2025 is running the show, and they're just there to be pretty.
Yeah. The thing that's so astounding and so disturbing about 2025 is that the president, in an unusual action, told a bald-faced lie about his association with 2025, and then after the election said, now I can admit my association with them. I mean, what's happening in public life where, telling a lie is okay. I remember, think about Joe Biden got drummed out of the 1988 presidential race because he plagiarized somebody.
Right.
I mean, my God, how far down the tube have we gone from that?
And you got Melania, anyway, we don't even want to go against Melania. She is pretty. But I think it's really unfortunate that these the cabinet is really there for looks, and there's not all of them.
The cabinet's there because of the 25th Amendment. I mean, the removing of a president under the 25th Amendment starts with the cabinet.
Well, it almost happened last time, but these guys, he's got a whole new crop.
Well, yeah, that is the main qualification is that you will act right in compliance with the 25th Amendment.
Everybody takes an oath to the Constitution, but then they don't follow it.
Well, yeah, I mean, he got people that are just have to be super loyal. That's the main, that is the only qualification. And also, the less competent they are, the more loyal they are. Absolutely. Because they owe more to him. Look at we appointed a Secretary of Defense because he promised he'd quit drinking. I mean, we could go wrong there. I mean, my God. So, he's a solid vote for the president when it comes to the 25th Amendment.
Well, and he's delivering.
Yeah, he is delivering.
He sent 700 or 500 Marines out to quell the violence in a couple of neighborhoods in LA where they were dancing. It's pretty crazy. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but this whole reality show that Trump has orchestrated, and the media is broadcasting it in real time. And it's just a reality TV show, and people are tuned in to see what the next craziness has happened. Who's going to survive the island?
I mean, Trump is to the media on both left and right. Trump is to the media like hurricanes are to the weather forecast. I mean, it just raises ratings. I mean,
absolutely
with hurricanes and weather alert days. There are a lot more of those than they used to be.
Those weathermen, that's their time.
Yeah, I mean, it just raises the ratings, and that's what Trump has done.
I
to the news media.
I do miss Margaret Orr. I just wanted to say,
maybe
she'll come back.
I kind of was late to the party with Margaret Orr, because Margaret used to be so what's the word, sensationalist.
She was.
I mean, it was like they're going to be 10 feet of water on Monroe Street, and but that's what you needed for ratings. You needed that.
She liked the.
I miss Margaret Orr too.
I miss Margaret Orr. Anyway, we're in hurricane season down here in Louisiana, and it normally comes in August. My wife's birthday is August 30th, and for Katrina, she got a chainsaw and a generator. And Hurricane Ida, she got a chainsaw and a generator for her birthday. All compliments of FEMA. So hurricanes here really come out of the Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico, and they hit us in August and September. But look at last year. They went all the way up into North Carolina. Look at when Sandy went all the way up to New Jersey, New York City. We have some of the most powerful people in Washington who represent Louisiana. We have the Speaker of the House. We have Steve Scalise. We have Bill Cassidy and that country bumpkin.
Senator Cornpone.
Cornpone. Anyway, they're all very powerful, and all of them have no interest in climate change and no interest in the fact that sea level is rising.
Well, I'm going to just say this, Keith. If one of the reasons is, and I think this goes across the board on a lot of things, is if you look at what the concern is of the American people, it's less than 7-8% that are concerned about climate change.
Yeah,
I mean, we've met the enemy, and the enemy is us.
Yeah,
and it's just like the same thing with the things that are going on today. I mean, it's a call to challenge for all of us to stand up and do something about it. And you're not going to have politicians do something about climate change when nobody seems to be concerned about it. I mean, it's truly
really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I drive a Prius, and we get good gas mileage, and it's a 2013. It's an old Prius, but I know that Musk was really disappointed when he put into this big beautiful bill that they were getting rid of any credits for electric vehicles.
That was so wrong. I mean, they lumped Musk in with the rest of the environmentalists that they were cutting. I mean, that just isn't right. After everything he has done for Musk.
How greedy is Musk? They put him in there. He protects every business he has. He's making billions of dollars. You never saw him on a chopping block. But the one thing they did was to get rid of some incentives for people to buy electric vehicles. And he goes crazy and tells them that Trump's an SP.
Yeah, which is that?
That other guy's file.
Yeah, it remain nameless. But you touched on something, Keith, and I have to say, I'm so glad that on day number 1, the president took on head on one of the most important issues that we confront today. And he wasn't scared. He didn't back away. And he changed it to the Gulf of America. I could not have lived another day with that fallacy. It was living a lie. It was absolutely living a lie. And my only complaint is I wish our governor would find the bejeenies to claim our section of the Gulf of Louisiana.
The Gulf of Louisiana.
Now, I don't know why he can't do the patriotic, courageous thing and show the kind of courage to take a stand on something as critical to you and my everyday life.
I think we could sell naming rights to the golf.
I'm thinking T-shirts. I think it's. Thank God the president did that. I could not have lived another day with that.
He's got a big
day one
board in his in the Oval Office with Gulf of America. That is such a big win for Trump. Anyway, we don't know how often we're going to do this, but when we do it, we're going to have fun, and it's going to be a conversation. So if anybody wants to be on this podcast, just let us know.
Yeah, we haven't gotten a camera yet, so you don't have to worry about that.
No visuals. Well, Edward, it's been fun. We've got 42 minutes in, but I think we're probably going to edit some of this out. And I don't know. We're going to try to do it next week, but who knows if we're going to do it that often. And right now, it's going to be on YouTube because we don't have any apps. And one day, who knows? Maybe we'll be on Spotify and Apple. But for now, we are on the porch, having a little porch therapy in Mandeville, Louisiana. We don't have any sponsors, so we might make some up.
You know how, like, when you're a kid and you have imaginary friends? I think we should have some imaginary sponsors.
I think we should have some imaginary sponsors, too. We're not looking for... Well, we are looking for sponsors. Anybody want to sponsor us? Send it to our email address, and I'll put that on the end of this recording. Anyway, so what else is happening
around here?
Well, we're going to talk about local, state, federal, international, and maybe when we go to Mars.
Well, we're of course, as you alluded to earlier, we were fighting the removal off of Scenic Rivers protection of basically 9 rivers that have been put on Scenic Rivers protections over the last 40 years. And put on by Republicans, Democrats. It's probably the most bipartisan effort in St. Tammany Parish.
I mean, we live in Louisiana. It's a sportsman's paradise.
St. Tammany Parish has probably the most diverse waterways of any parish in the state. So anyway, we were successful in getting that done. I'd like to find out where that came from for sure.
But and recently there was a bill in the Louisiana legislature to cut back some of those protections from some of those scenic streams. And it's all developer driven. It's all to make more development. So we sure don't want to have any environmental conditions that say we can't develop. And St. Tammany Parish, unfortunately, right now has very little taxes to go to to run the government.
Right.
So development and cost to develop, fees run the government. So they need development to be able to run government. And so they're trying to degrade the environment for the benefit of new development. And one of the casualties was the Scenic Rivers Act.
This one, it was interesting. I don't know that the developers were
pushing it.
I tend to think that they were not the people that were trying to do it. But you're right. The voters, it's a vicious cycle. The voters don't trust the government, so the government does desperate things that erode trust even more, like happened with the most recent tax, where they tried to sneak into the drainage, the courthouse, and the district attorney. And
well, I mean, they were taking the road tax and siphoning some money off the road tax to be able to pay for mandated state courts.
Right.
Taxes.
And that kind of stuff. And, they have to find a way to do it because they're not getting the tax base, and they're not getting the tax base because they do this kind of stuff.
I mean, so many taxes have failed to fund the court system and the district attorney's office. So he's trying we have our own Doge here.
That's what I heard.
I don't know the name of it, but it's some related.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, can't
crazy.
you see that? I mean, I'm sure we've got one in Baton Rouge too. I mean,
I'm sure.
I mean, I'm sure we're going to see like Doge conventions and Doge associations and those kind of things tend to evolve in that kind of way. I like to call them, instead of Doge, just, doggy.
Doggy, take off the.
No, you leave everything on. It's doggy.
Doggy. As we say in Louisiana, maybe there's an accent on the last E.
Yeah.
Doggy.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, well, we will get into maybe some local stuff, but if somebody is from Idaho, they don't really give a rat's ass of what's happening in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana. So we're going to mix it up a little bit, see who our audience is.
Mm-hmm.
When you send in those cards and letters. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like us to talk about, send us an email to aporchpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll read it on the air. And if nobody sends us any, we'll just make them up.
We'll make some questions.
We'll make them up.
Yeah, yeah. Gertrude from Greenland wants to know.
And I just want to let everybody, all of our listeners know, that we are going to invite the president
to respond,
to be on our podcast. And we might invite our local representatives too. Bill Cassidy, Senator Cornpone, Little Mike,
T. Mike.
Okay, bye for now. That beautiful music is Zach Villery. Check him out on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your music.